Now,
good morning and welcome to the 2021 Latino Journalists Awards and online conference presented by CCNMA, Latino Journalists of California. I am Lori Ochoa, president of CCNMA and arts and entertainment editor of the Los Angeles Times, overseeing Sunday calendar. On behalf of the board of directors, I would like to welcome you all to our second virtual Latino Journalist Celebration, where we honor this year's 10 most influential Latina journalists in California, the Emerging Latina Journalist of the Year, and the Latina Journalist of the Year. Each was nominated and voted on by our wider membership. Before we go further, I want to thank board member Jacqueline Garcia, reporter from La Opinion and chairperson of today's event. She put together the terrific panels you'll be seeing for today's online conference. I also want to thank board member Luz Villarreal for her technical assistance today, and CCNMA Executive Director Macalo Medina of NBC Los Angeles. Macalo is on leave this month, but he still did some essential work in organizing this event. Okay, so we have a full day for you. At 10:30, we'll hear from Diana Fuentes, the first Latina Executive Director of the IRE, or Investigative Reporters and Editors. At noon, we'll announce this year's Latina Journalist Awards. And at 1 p.m., we'll have a discussion about mental health, coping with the stresses of COVID while gathering stories, and with the pressures of trying to find your place in organizations facing racial and gender reckonings. But first, we are so lucky to have three incredible women for our first panel. It's a conversation led by CCNMA board member Cassandra Gutierrez of KRCR, the ABC affiliate in Redding, where she is a reporter, multimedia journalist, and member of the station's First Alert weather team. She's reported on human trafficking and homelessness and has some experiences in the field and online that I'm anxious to hear more about. Cassandra will be talking with her KRCR colleague, Daisy Caballero, a reporter at the station who started as a radio DJ at age 15. And Jean Guerrero, who I'm thrilled joined the Los Angeles Times this year as an opinion columnist and quickly became an essential read at the paper. Jean, who started her career at the Wall Street Journal and whose work has been featured in Vanity Fair, Politico, The Nation, Wired, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and PBS NewsHour, has more experience than most of us encounter in dealing with online hate because she doesn't shy away from difficult subjects. Consider that her second book was the deeply reported and groundbreaking Hate Monger, Stephen Miller, Donald Trump, and the White Nationalist Agenda. Jean's first book, by the way, Crux, a cross-border memoir, won a PEN Literary Award. Jean, Cassandra, Daisy, welcome. I'm going to step back and listen to what all of you have to say. Thanks.
All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Cassandra Gutierrez. I am a reporter, a weekend weather anchor at KRCR in Redding. Thank you so much, Lori, and thank you so much, everybody who is joining us here today. So let's get started. We have Daisy Caballero and Jean Guerrero. Ladies, do you guys mind introducing yourself? We'll start with Jean.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jean. It's so great to be here with you all. And I don't have much to add by way of introduction beyond what Lori said. I'm just, super excited to be a columnist at the Los Angeles Times and to get the opportunity to analyze and to comment on everything from white nationalism to the rise of disinformation that we're seeing in Latino communities overall, and threats to democracy, which we're seeing more and more of today. And my career has really gone from all kinds of journalism, newspaper, public media, doing TV and radio, and now I'm back to really focusing on print.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jean. And we're so happy to have you guys. And we're also happy to have Daisy. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Daisy Caballero, and I am with KRCR News Channel 7. I'm an MMJ reporter, also where Cassandra works at. So yeah, a little bit about me. I started my journalism career almost 2 years ago. So January of 2020 right before the pandemic hit. But these almost past 2 years have been, honestly, in my opinion, life-changing. And I am beyond thankful of all the opportunities and obstacles that have maybe came before me as a journalist and as a person in general. And so I'm excited to share my experience so far and, ask questions and have you guys ask questions for me. And yeah, I'm very excited and honored to be here. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Daisy, and thank you so much, Jean. So our topic today is about safety out in the field reporting and online as well. Daisy or Jean, do you guys want to start us off on experiences you guys have came across or talk about safety in general out on the field? Have you guys seen anything that maybe is threatening? I know we do have a wealth of experience, especially in this era. Daisy, you are still on the screen. Let's start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, very, very new to this, this career so far, but, I have been put into maybe some uncomfortable situations, whether it's online, getting unwanted, unneeded messages, somewhat threatening, somewhat, people just commenting on things maybe that they shouldn't have. And, I get those, whether it's through a direct message to me specifically and or also to the newsroom. So I've had a little bit of that. And I've also had, people come up to me when I'm trying to talk to people for my stories unfortunately, on a day-to-day basis. And it's the whole, hey, fake news, what's your agenda, this and that. So, it has been a little difficult, but, with seeing this time and time again, I've kind of learned to kind of just brush it off because I know who I am as a journalist. I know what my intentions are. Again, no agenda, just here to report on stories, report the facts, nothing more, not include my opinion whatsoever. And just knowing that I know that for myself gives me a little bit more like ease of mind. And so, yeah, in person, when people kind of go up to me and, say the whole fake news, this and that, I say, I'm sorry that you think of that, but, that is totally not what I'm here to do. I'm here to, again, I just reiterate, I'm here to tell stories. I'm here to talk to the community. I'm not here to put my input whatsoever. And, a little bit more now than at the beginning of the pandemic and all of that, people are starting to be a little bit more understanding. Because I think it's important to know that, yes, we are journalists, but we are human as well. We have feelings, we have, I feel like we just deserve the human to human respect. And again, slowly but surely, I feel like people now are a little bit more receptive and, caring a little bit more. So at least that's how I kind of focus on in-person interactions. Online interactions, that's, I kind of struggle with, whether I respond or not respond because, I don't want to be rude or, don't want to ignore anyone because I just don't like to do that. I don't like pushing people off, but, just finding the happy medium of, what is, a respectful answer. And then maybe when something's just too bad, too rude, too, I shouldn't even put any energy into it. I kind of just delete that, the comment, the email, all of that stuff, and just move on. So it's been a little bit difficult kind of dealing with these, but, I'm here and I'm here to learn. And I'm so excited to hear what Jean has to say. Obviously, she has a little bit more experience.
Yeah, thank you, Daisy. And let's move it on to Jean now. Jean, can you share a little bit about your experience as far as any time your safety has been threatened at any point in time in your career?
Yeah, well, so it's been interesting because the first half of my 20s, like the first few years of my career as a journalist, I was a correspondent in Mexico City, traveling across Mexico and Central America. And there I heard, there was a constant refrain about, safety and having to take extra care of yourself as a journalist in, especially I was covering commodities and I was going out into very remote rural areas. And so that was a constant, thing that was being talked about in the newsroom. And then I came back to the United States in 2015, right around the time that Donald Trump was announcing his candidacy by bashing Mexicans. And it completely transformed what I thought it meant to be a journalist in the United States. I'd always had this impression that, in the United States, we have freedom of speech. Journalists are not persecuted. They're not, they don't have to worry about state sanctioned attacks or anything like that. And actually, I ended up feeling a lot more threatened here than I ever felt in, south of the border. And it started with covering the Trump rallies. There was one big one in San Diego in early 2016, where I had never seen so much vitriol in my life. I was outside and there were the pro-Trump people who couldn't get into the building and they were just there to show their support for Trump. And then there were, protesters who were showing up to express their opposition to his candidacy. And the pro-Trump people were just, screaming racial slurs at the anti-Trump people, brown and Black communities. And I'd never seen that level of hatred, that level of open hatred, just like completely shameless. People were throwing things like, eventually the riot police came. And that was my first time as a journalist where I felt like I didn't feel safe, like communicating to the world that I was a journalist because of the fact that there was so much anti-media bias all of a sudden, like as Stacey was saying, like suddenly you're like evil because you're a journalist out there trying to inform the public about what's going on. I started taking measures like hiding my notebook. I just felt like I had to sort of try to blend in a way that I'd never before, particularly at Trump rallies. I would go and I just wouldn't feel very safe, having my notebook out and being an obvious journalist, because then people get in your face and like, what are you doing here? And it's just like a mob of people who don't believe in what you do. And if you're alone, it can be really nerve wracking. So I would always try to go to these events with, a videographer, a teammate. But then, lately, obviously, because I put out this very controversial book, Hate Monger, and we can talk about that a little bit more in depth later, but I took a lot of measures to protect my family and my digital safety before it came out, because I understood the level of just how intense the reaction might be. And I reached out to PEN America, and they were very, very helpful as far as tips. My first book, Crux, was very personal. So it had like my close family members' names in it. And I realized like that it would provided sort of a map for like, targeting me or coming after my family. And I was very concerned about that when Hate Monger was coming out. So PEN America helped me, but they put me in touch with this service called Privacy Duck. There's also another service called Delete Me, where they go through, and it's a paid service, you have to pay, but there are discounts for journalists. They go through and they delete your and any of your close family members' addresses, phone numbers. They basically wipe you from the publicly searchable databases so that you become a lot more difficult to dox. If somebody wants to dox you and tell people to go after you or your family, tell people where you live, it's just a lot harder for them to do that. So I paid for that service, took a lot of steps to protect my accounts, my cybersecurity, and was just very meticulous about it ahead of the book coming out. So once the book came out and the vitriol started, I felt pretty safe. Like I felt like, okay, come after me, like send all the death threats and hate mail that you want. Like, I mean, it's very disturbing. It's very mentally like kind of, I don't know, disorienting to receive that level of hatred, but knowing that I had taken the steps that I needed to take to protect my family and to protect myself, just really gave me a lot of peace of mind.
Yeah, and with that said, how do you ladies deal with hate comments? And Jean, like you mentioned, death threats, that must have been pretty scary, I bet. You're still on the screen, Jean. Let's get you to answer that question first, and then we'll have Daisy answer.
Well, so I, for a time when I was receiving a lot of them, I had some friends sifting, like when a lot of it was coming through social media, I had some friends sort of sifting through it for me and saving like screenshots of the actual like stuff that might be worth talking to the police about. And they would send that to me. And then whenever I felt like emotionally like stable and like, okay, I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm going to look at these things. I would review them, like the things that my friends had flagged as potential areas of concern. But nothing ever rose to the level of like, I know where you live, which is what the police require, like for them to actually go and investigate is like a very specific death threat. Like, I'm going to come to your house tomorrow at 5 p.m. and I'm going to shoot you. So nothing like that ever happened. It was always just like, fantasies of I hope the neo-Nazis come and rape you, or like, I hope you're deported, or like, I hope you get COVID and choke on your vomit, things like that. But as far as like how I would cope, so the thing is like, the people who are sending this are like not people that you care about what they think, because it's just so awful. Like, why would anyone sit down at a computer and like send this vitriol to somebody? But it still gets to you, because it's like, why do these people like, why are they doing this? Like, what is wrong with them? And why do so many of these people like exist? And so it gets to you. And the one way I've found to cope with it is just to not read a lot of it. I can usually tell from like the subject line in emails, like the first sentence or so, whether I want to keep going, and I'll just ignore it. And I've been advised to create like a folder where I actually like keep all of these. And I'm not very good about doing that, but I would suggest to people who are getting this type of hatred to keep track of it without necessarily reading it or delving into it. Designate someone, a trusted friend, or better yet, someone at work that like gets someone that like your bosses agree this should be part of their job to like help you, and to do so in a way that's not going to emotionally or energetically drain you. I just think it's a good idea to have a record of these things.
That's very, very smart. You always want to keep logs, always want to keep records. And Daisy, how about in your experience, how have you dealt with maybe hate comments or rude comments in the past?
Yeah, so kind of a lot what Jean said. She said a lot of amazing, good tips. And so I too have never really, or I in general haven't really gotten like death threats to the point like Jean just described. But obviously a lot of hate messages, hate comments on Facebook Lives. And, I'm trying to report on something, and, those comments just keep popping up and all of that. At the beginning of my career, it was really, really hard for me not to go back on my stories that I've done, controversial stories, maybe more specifically, whether it's vaccines, mandates, the presidency before, the change and whatnot. And so I kind of learned that it's not really healthy to a certain extent. I found it very draining, very, it just made me feel something that I'm not. And, knowing that I'm not that, what these people say, like Jean said, a lot of the time, these people who comment, we don't even know them. They don't even know us on a personal level or really anything. They just know us as a journalist or a reporter or, something affiliated with, the media is what they say. And so I just really take it upon myself, kind of, again, just what Jean said, kind of tried to not look at those comments. And if there is maybe something, to that degree, I would also, bring it to my news director and say, hey, I got this comment, not sure what to do with it, this and that. And then obviously she would, say if we need to go forward with certain steps and whatnot. But maybe another thing too, that, like I said earlier, I would be getting messages on social media. But at the beginning of my career, I would be getting them on my personal, like, Facebook page, not my professional one. And it just kind of made me a little bit uneased. And so I remember talking to my news director and a few other reporters during that time. And they told me, hey, how about you change maybe your last name on your personal profiles that you don't want, public. On Facebook, I think it's a lot more of me sharing, videos and pictures and memories with my close family and friends. And so the fact that maybe someone who, wants to threaten me in some way, shape, or form, the fact that they could see that, or, knew who my siblings are, or my parents are, or something like that, kind of made me a little bit uneased. And so they encouraged me to change my last name to either a middle name, which I don't have a middle name. So I changed it to my mom's maiden name, but I'm thinking maybe that I should maybe change that as well. But once I did that transition, obviously the hate messages weren't coming to my, my personal page. They obviously just started going to my professional page, as now they search Daisy Caballero. They go directly to my professional and not Daisy, my mom's maiden name, for my personal. So I found that a little helpful to kind of ease down on the hate messages, all the hate speech, all that stuff that we unfortunately get on a, day-to-day basis at some points. So that's, I guess, kind of what I've done. But yeah, like Jean just said, like I said earlier, just kind of putting that back and really trying not to put all my energy into reading those comments again, just because I know that these people don't know who I am as a human to human basis, or as a person. And so, yeah, that's a little bit how I deal with it.
Yeah, that's a great point there. Yeah, go ahead, Jean.
All right, I just wanted to jump in case I forgot that there's also filters that I've been advised to put in place, and I'm just so bad with technology, so I haven't done this, but I really just suggest to people. I mean, like, obviously, like, if somebody's sending you emails with cuss words in them, like, that is an easy way to filter that stuff out. Like, you just never, you can make it so that it gets directed straight to a folder that you've created for, like, hate mail or junk, or, like, some place where you can actually keep a record of it. But you can set up filters on your email accounts where you filter out anything with, like, I don't know, cuss words, or I don't know, you can find, like, a lot of these emails end up sounding the same. It's like very unoriginal. There's always something in there about, like, go back to where you came from, or, like, and so there are ways to kind of filter that stuff out through your accounts.
How does that make you guys feel, ladies? Jean, thank you for sharing some of that. Thank you for sharing that, those tips and information, because that's what we're here to do, is share for our viewers what they can do to stay safe. And thank you for sharing, Daisy, also those safety measures you've taken. As journalists, I mean, I know I do my job to give my heart to the community and tell the stories of my community members in the community I live in. And I have no intent in doing harm. And I know Jean's heart, Daisy's heart, in the same place, as most of us journalists would say any journalist is. How does that make you guys feel? I mean, we're people in the community trying to help our community. So getting these kinds of threats, comments, how does that make you feel?
Yeah, I'll maybe go first. So, I mean, like I said, it's been quite a journey, mentally, emotionally, these past 2 years. Again, just me as a person in this industry. I like I said before, I wouldn't change it for the world. but, it's obviously not easy. It's, taxing on mental health. And again, just at the beginning of my career, it was really difficult for me to understand that people disliked me so much, didn't know me at all as a person again, but just because I was a journalist. And being a journalist during that specific time was starting to be controversial because of COVID and all of that. And so it was hard. And I just, talked with my news director, and she's been in this business for 20 plus years. And so she just, kind of gave me advice and told me, just try not to listen to these people, you know who you are. But it was difficult. There was plenty of nights of, crying and, not understanding why we are treated the way that we are. And so, yeah, to say the least, it's very difficult. It was very taxing, but I feel like now journalists are maybe more supportive of each other now more than ever, which I think is absolutely amazing. And it's helping, time and time again. It's helping me every day, or when I get those hate messages or that hate email, or, people coming up to me and yelling and saying rude things. It's a little bit easier to kind of take in and kind of say, you know what, yes, I understand, people have their opinions, but, I'm just not going to let that affect me. But yeah, just talking a lot with my news directors, my other reporter friends who know what I go through, because we all unfortunately go through this. Just having someone that you can relate to and kind of just talk about it and maybe help form healthy habits and ways to kind of cope with all the hate speech, hate emails, all that stuff, I guess has kind of helped me. But for a while, it was really, really difficult.
Thank you, Daisy. Jean, how does that make you feel? And also, like Daisy, you shared some advice. Jean, if you could also share some advice emotionally, mentally, how you stay sane, that would be awesome.
Yeah. Well, Daisy put it really well. I mean, right now it's just impossible to really have any longevity in this industry if you don't reach out to people and see this as a community effort. When I started out as a journalist, I really saw this as like a solitary endeavor. I think it's the way that I had seen journalism depicted in the media. The journalist is like kind of a loner and like off by themselves, saving the world or whatever. But obviously, like that doesn't work. Like especially like our problems, as far as like just the disinformation and people. And like just like the fundamental mission of journalism, which is, as a fourth pillar of democracy, like we hold democracy up. It's just impossible with all of the attacks on democracy that we have right now to do this on our own, and it can be incredibly overwhelming to think about the scope of the problem, the magnitude of it, and to think of yourself as somebody who's trying to single-handedly to fix it. So for me, it's always been, not always, but very the past few years, I've started to really see journalism as a community endeavor and to build a sort of family through journalism. And weirdly enough, like Twitter, actually, as toxic as Twitter is, I can't really vouch for Twitter, but the one thing that Twitter did do for me is it allowed me to connect with journalists all over the country who followed areas of interest to me and whose work was really inspiring to me. And, I would just kind of reach out to them and slowly, building this community of like-minded people who are trying to inform people about the same areas of the world. And that has just been incredibly helpful to me, not only psychologically and emotionally, but practically as well. Like when I started out with the Stephen Miller book, I had a very, very ambitious deadline, and I would not have been able to do it without the support from journalists who I'd never, in some cases, had never met in person, but I had these ongoing conversations with them over the years, and had established a level of trust and, them providing, like Steve Bannon's cell phone number, for example, like then that's not something I would have been able to get on my own in the time frame that I had. So just like sources and just feeling that support from people that I've in some cases never met was incredibly rooting and fulfilling to me. So that community is just absolutely essential. Because we're taught, or at least when I was in journalism school, like I was taught that journalists are the fourth pillar of democracy. Like we are doing a service to this country. And now there's millions of people in this country that actually see us as the enemy. And it's very destabilizing, and you just have to not be afraid to reach out and ask for help, and particularly with your managers. Like when you're a journalist starting out, I was always kind of afraid to ask for help, I never asked for like a mental health day or anything like that, but you would like need to in this realm when you're getting hate mail like that. It's incredibly disorienting, and you sometimes just need time to remember like what, I don't know, just that you're a human being in the world. You can get really like sucked up into this industry, into the work, because you feel that it's so important and you feel like you can't take a break. You can't stop doing the work. Otherwise you're letting people down, you're letting democracy down. And that's just like, it's the recipe for burnout. Like you need to stop, and you need to take time to be physical. Like for me, like swimming at least every other day has been a super essential just to my mental health, and to remembering that like I'm a body in the world, and like, connecting with my friends, staying in touch with family. Like it's easy to forget how necessary those things are. And sometimes you need to ask for time off. And I think that I think now as journalism is just in the extreme environment that we find ourselves in, I think that managers are a lot more understanding than they used to be, as far as like the toll that this can take, and being willing to work with you when you try to set boundaries.
And Jean, yeah.
Thank you, Jean. Yeah, go ahead, Daisy.
Sorry, Cass. I just wanted to say, yeah, I definitely echo what Jean said. Just doing something when you're not working on your off time, something that you enjoy, whether it's physical or painting or hanging out with friends. I also more recently have been trying to disconnect, not be on my phone all the time, as hard as it is. Obviously, we're looking for stories. We're always looking for news, breaking news, and trying to keep the community informed as best as we can. But again, I'm starting to realize that it's also important to, disconnect from my phone, a little, maybe a few more hours than I typically would on my days off, just so I can do stuff that I enjoy, and kind of helps, not create that burnout, and helps you kind of still enjoy what you do without being, too taxing. So I just wanted to jump in and say, I definitely echo what Jean just said.
Yes, that is some great tips, especially going to the gym, exercising, whatever you find yourself doing, going out on walks that allow you to just debrief and not be so consumed in the day-to-day challenges that we do see every day. And I want to talk a little bit about Jean's book, and then I also want to talk about, because we experience the safety hazards when it comes to people, but also, Daisy, I know you've covered wildfires. So also safety hazard when it comes into disaster. So if we can go in whichever order, maybe I want to know about, Daisy, your experience in safety in wildfires and natural disasters. And then and before that, probably Jean, I did see the book behind you. So I'd like to know about what kept you going in that tight deadline when you were writing the book, and then how you mentally prepared for its release.
Well, so what's interesting to me is actually that when the book came out, I got a lot of vitriol on social media, and I even the acting secretary of Homeland Security, Chad Wolf, texted me very angrily. And this was around the time that DHS was abducting the protesters in Portland, and journalists, and keeping a docket on journalists. So it was very, anxiety provoking to get these angry text messages from the acting secretary of DHS. And I got some threats of lawsuits and things like that, but it didn't feel like the way that it felt when I joined as a columnist at the LA Times and I began to cover the California recall election, where the Republican frontrunner in that election was a man named Larry Elder, who I happened to know a lot about because he was a mentor of Stephen Miller, and I had read a bunch of his books and I had interviewed him in person. And I knew that he had repeatedly cited and had been shaped by the work of a white supremacist named Jared Taylor. And this was stuff that was not being reported in the race. And when I started reporting it, I got a level of vitriol that I've never gotten in my life. At times I thought my phone was going to break because I was getting so many notifications that I had to turn it off. Fox News did multiple stories about me. Tucker Carlson took a clip where I was on MSNBC talking about my reporting. He played it on his show and laughed and said it was the funniest thing he'd ever seen. And that provoked, a bunch of vitriol in my inbox as well. Breitbart did a couple stories. One American News Network, which is based in San Diego, did a 12-minute segment about me with multiple photos of me and a photo of my father. And basically the entire segment was about how I'm mentally ill because mental illness is hereditary. And my father has struggled with substance abuse and what I long thought was schizophrenia. And I had by that point, I was fully I knew that at some point, my reporting was going to lead people to go to my first book, Crux, which is very vulnerable and about, my family's most difficult moments, and try to use that to smear my credibility. So it was not a surprise at all. But seeing my father's face on that, the fact that they took a photo of my dad and put it on their screen to try to create vitriol and to ridicule him and to ridicule my family was out of this world, enraging. That was probably the culmination of all of the hatred, because it was all coming at once. And it was when I started at the LA Times, which is interesting because the book Hate Monger had come out a year before that. But what I had learned through reporting the book allowed me to, I guess a lot of people knew, the fact that Stephen Miller played this central role in the cruelty of the Trump administration was not a major surprise to people. But I guess in this case, I was making a very direct impact on, or I was potentially making a direct impact on the outcome of an election in California. It was actually what I was putting out was potentially damaging in a very serious way to a candidate. And that created all this crazy hysteria on right-wing media where I became the story. And yeah, it was just unlike anything I'd ever experienced. But again, knowing that I had taken the steps to protect my family in the way that I could did give me a level of peace of mind. And I did reach out to One American News, and because they used all these photos of me and the photo of my dad that they did not have permission to use. It was a copyright violation. So I spoke with my manager and she was very helpful. And, I sent them an email just letting them know that it was a copyright violation and that they should not upload it to the internet, because I was very concerned about my dad seeing it. I really did not want my dad to see that. So they didn't upload it online. So just don't be afraid to defend yourself, I guess, is the advice that comes out of that little anecdote.
Thank you so much, Gina. And we're happy that it's not online and that you did take some steps. And yeah, don't be afraid to take those safety measure steps and to speak up and in a respectful way, stand up for yourself as well. But when there's no need to stand up for yourself, such as in wildfires, there's nothing you can say to the natural disasters of the world. Daisy, how do you stay safe?
Well, Cass, it's been a process. I'm originally from the Oregon coast, and we don't have wildfires over there. And so coming to the North State, where wildfires, at least these past few years, have been so prevalent and deadly, and it's just it was a little bit of a, it's been difficult to kind of figure out, the safety measures, because you never know, like you said, you never know with wildfires. And for the most part, being an MMJ, we're out doing it all by ourselves. We don't have, a photographer or anything like that. And it's been, I've been in certain situations where I maybe wouldn't have wanted to be. I'm maybe writing a story and trying to meet deadline, and I'm just so focused on maybe just meeting my deadlines and getting the story back to the newsroom that maybe more recently with the Dixie Fire, which was California's single most biggest wildfire in California history, almost burned 1 million acres, and I was essentially about to be stuck inside of the fire, and thankfully I ended up getting service, because that's another thing too. We don't have cell phone service for the most part. Officials are really everywhere, scattered, trying to get, people out of their homes and helping, farmers with their animals and all that. Sometimes it's hard to realize that there's a lot going on around me. And so maybe during that specific time, I was able to, I got a phone call from my news director, and she said, "Hey, not sure if you heard, not sure if you know that this is going on, but you need to get out of there." And it was, it was just very life altering, I feel like, because I've never been in that type of situation before. And then from that point on, I made it very, very clear for myself that I have to, set certain boundaries, on what makes me feel safe and what I think would put my life in danger, because, no story is worth our lives. And so from there on, I just made sure that I was a lot more aware of my surroundings, making sure that I was near or by officials in some way, shape, or form. That kind of helped me as well. And just being very vigilant of what's, my surroundings. And me personally, I haven't been in an interaction with maybe a farmer or a family who doesn't want to evacuate when they are asked to evacuate. I've had some colleagues who have had guns pulled out on them, and officials too, and to journalists as well, saying, you're not going to tell me what to do. I'm going to stay here. And, those types of situations, we're just trying to talk to people, say, why are you here? Why are you not evacuating? But then we're kind of put in those really, really difficult situations, when a gun is involved, or, something else, people say, I'm going to maybe like run you over or something like that if you don't get out of the way, get off of my property, this and that. So it's been a learning process. But yeah, just being more aware and setting boundaries on what makes you feel safe, and making sure that your life is not in any danger whatsoever, whether it's, maybe not knocking on that door, that's the only house in the radius of a few miles. Your life is worth more than this story, unfortunately. And so those are, I guess, have been some of my experiences. And yeah, hopefully I answered your question, Cass. I don't know if you want to do any follow-ups. I'm hoping I answered that.
Yeah, that is great experience, and very unfortunate too, because we do live in the North State where there's fires, and fire season is getting worse, that like we've seen it get in the last several years. And not just that, we have winter storms that are coming up. So once we're done with fire seasons, we're into winter storms sometimes. And part of our job, Daisy and I, is going out to these winter storms, especially when I do weather reporting. There was one time I was trapped, my first winter storm. It was storming and snowing and I couldn't really see, but I couldn't stay there either. So just being safe, listening to yourself, setting those boundaries, whether it's speaking up, and when you don't feel safe in a situation, no story is worth your life, or no live shot is worth your life, is one of quotes that we've seen float around in the newsroom quite often. So thank you for sharing that, Daisy. Jean, do you have anything else that you'd like to add as far as safety goes when you're out on protests? Maybe how do you approach that? How do you know who to talk to? I know for myself, when I've been at protests or Trump rallies, I've find who I feel I can talk to, whether that's the leader of the protest or just a friendly face that I feel comfortable talking to. And a lot of them, Jean, are you there?
Yes. Can you see me?
Okay, there we go. Okay, perfect. Yeah, we can see you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, like just having the equipment, like the gas masks, like just having that there, knowing that the tear gassing can take place, making sure that your newsroom is equipping you with what you need to take care of your health in the event of these protests getting really serious. Like if you're covering a protest in the event of them getting really serious. And I used to be one of those journalists who just, if I heard of a protest, I would just go by myself without a plan. And I never do that anymore. I think that you need to go with somebody. Like it's very important that you have somebody with you, particularly if you're going to a protest where that the media is demonized. Like it's just very important not to be by yourself, and just to have somebody who's like watching your back and that you're watching theirs, and you can just work as a team. That's the only thing that I would add. I think Daisy very thoroughly covered that. I mean, yeah, just having the equipment is incredibly important.
Perfect. What is maybe if you guys want to share either one of the most scariest moment or some of your best advice? I know it's the two ends of the spectrum there, but I think it'd be interesting for us to hear both. And if we have any viewers and you guys want to ask questions, drop those in the chat and we will definitely answer those.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I could also go first. So maybe, I've had a few, well, obviously these past almost 2 years, it's been really COVID and the presidency and just a lot of that. But maybe to talk about one specific event, or maybe the scariest, or maybe something that has just kind of really stuck with me. There was this leader for this group in the community that we live in the North State in Shasta County, who is anti-vax and doesn't believe in vaccines at all whatsoever. And I clearly remember going to a mass vaccination clinic where people were driving their cars in. And at that point, it was really the elderly population, those who were 75 and up, 65 and up during that time, and just wanted to inform people that this was going on. And I just remember seeing this person, and he had his own camera or his cell phone. And I just remember him walking towards me, and I just knew that he was going to come up to me and, make fun of me and call me fake news and essentially disrupt my Facebook Live, where, our social media on Facebook specifically is probably the biggest one at our station. And so we have, I believe, over 200,000 people who follow us. So, and during those specific events, a lot of people tune in, a lot of people want to know what's going on. And so I knew that I felt like I was going to be in danger in some way, shape, or form, whether it's physically or whether it's, like emotional or verbal, excuse me. And so I just clearly remember being so terrified of someone that I know that doesn't like the media or journalists or anything like that, and is here to, make fun of me and put me down and put me on his social media saying, look at this journalist. She doesn't know what she's talking about, and just essentially just counterfeiting everything that I've said and shared with the community. Obviously, maybe more specifically with the COVID vaccine and during that time. So I think that might have been or at least come to mind right now, maybe the experience that I've had that's been so, I guess, terrifying, and it's just really stuck with me so far in my career. And yeah, so I essentially just decided to end the Facebook Live there quickly. And, I said, I'll be back hopefully very soon, stay tuned, and turned it off before that individual got anywhere closer to me or my surroundings, or would have, ruined my Facebook Live and all of that. So at least that's my experience. I don't know, Jean, if you had or have any experience that maybe that has stuck with you.
Well, so, I mean, I think like the most just traumatic events were the ones that I mentioned with like One American News coming after my dad and things like that in person. The only thing I would add is like, I feel like it's really important to take people at their word when they threaten you. Because I remember one time I was doing a story about a self-described vigilante at the border. We were doing a video feature of him, as part of a bigger feature about border fencing and the different perceptions of it and the different people whose lives revolve around the fencing and the border. And when we turned the cameras off, he was telling me that, like, I might be really nice to you and everything, but, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about, how am I going to kill you? and like, I like took it as a joke because we're just like, just like having the, like, we're just talking, we're like, and I had my videographer with me. So it didn't feel like anything was actually going to happen, and nothing happened, obviously, but he told me that. And he also said, like, we're plotting a revolution. We're if Trump doesn't win again, like we're gonna have a revolution. I'm like, well, what does that revolution look like? Like, and he pointed to this book in his living room saying like they're going to target leading Democrats. And he's like, and we know that like you guys in the media are Democrats too. And I never like reported that to, like, I never like took any of that. I was just like, this is so absurd. I asked if I could get some of it on the record because I thought it was really interesting for the story. And like he eventually did like give us an on the record little clip that I can't remember why we didn't use it in that ultimate feature, but I never reported this man, and he's passed away since then. But I look back on that and I think about how these are the types of individuals who participated in the insurrection on January 6th, and like who are capable of violence. And we just, sometimes like people give you like information that you should absolutely report. Talk to your editor about what is like the ethical thing as a journalist to do with that information, but like don't keep that to yourself, because it's just I don't know. I just look back on that incident. I'm like, man, like I feel like I should have done something more with that threat. And the other thing I wanted to add was like, one of the other things that gave me immense peace of mind when I was getting all of these threats, like when you get all of these threats and this vitriol and this hatred attacking your credibility as a journalist, you start to think like, well, what if it just starts to mess with you. Like, what if I did mess something up, right? Like, what if I made a mistake in that story, and then like they use that to like prove themselves right. That you don't have credibility as a journalist. And so like with hate monger, I used part of my book advance to hire a team of fact checkers. And also, like, even though HarperCollins has their own lawyer, I also had a lawyer review parts of the manuscript that I was concerned about. And so having people like comb through every sentence that I had written for any mistakes made it so that when I was getting threats and hatred, I was like, well, you know what, like, come at me. Like, I've taken care of protecting my family. I've made sure that this manuscript is 100% bulletproof. Like, there's nothing really for me to worry about other than like someone coming to my house and like, doing something to me. But that's very unlikely with the steps that I've taken. So yeah, just making sure that you produce really good work is also very good for sort of pushing away all of that hatred, because you're like, I stand by my work. I know that what I've produced is factual, and there's nothing that you could say to discredit me because I've taken all of the steps to make sure that this material is true.
That's awesome. And I definitely agree and would echo that, Jean. And one of the quotes when I was covering a lot of human trafficking stories, because it's a scary subject, one of the quotes that leaders would use was, don't be scared, be aware. Always be aware, like Jean said, your surroundings. Like Daisy, she was aware of her surroundings, knew what the next steps to take. And also, if you see something, say something. If you feel like your life is in danger, then say something, whether that's to a trusting person or your manager that could help you in that situation. And we do have a question from the audience, so that's exciting. The question was, what did each of you do in your steps to becoming a journalist? So how are you where you are now, and how did you start?
Well, so I remember in high school, I wanted to do horseback riding stuff. Like, I used to love horseback riding, and I wanted to pursue a career in equine studies. But my high school English teacher, I would write these personal essays for my high school English class, and they were about my dad and like all the struggles that I had with that. And he was like, like, writing about reality can actually be really anchoring and really like a gift personally to yourself, but also to like the world. And he encouraged me to pursue a career in journalism, which I had never considered before. I applied to USC's Annenberg School. It was the only journalism school that I applied to. And I applied like the day before the deadline, but I got in, and it ended up like being really amazing. Because while I was there, I got an internship at the Yakima Herald Republic, which is a small newspaper up in Washington. Then did one at the Seattle Times, then at the Wall Street Journal in Los Angeles. And from there, I was able to jump down to my first job in Mexico City. In a way, like, I was very, very privileged. My mom's a single mom, but she is a doctor. So she was able to, provide for me when I was doing that first internship, which was unpaid. My later internships were paid. So I understand like a lot of people don't have that opportunity. And I'm incredibly grateful and lucky to have had my mom to do that. But I just, that's how I got into journalism. And I just always just having your eyes open for opportunities to put your work out there. Like, one of the things when I was at USC, I did an environmental journalism class, and our homework assignment, I just got really into the assignment, which was to produce a 2,000 word article about an environmental issue. And I was doing it for homework anyway. So I was like, well, I'm going to just pitch it to this random alternative weekly and see what happens. And they ended up accepting it. They didn't pay well, but I was doing this thing for homework anyway. So I just really encourage people to, like, if you're doing this work already, like, find ways to get it out into the world. And often like alternative weeklies and like online publications are a really great way to do that.
Yeah. And so for me, I guess, I feel like I knew that I wanted to do some sort of journalism pretty early on in high school. Like Cassandra, I think also introduced me as I had my own morning talk show when I was when was this? I was a sophomore in high school, and I just had such an interest in radio, and we had a whole radio that was ran by students. It was a school or a student school run radio. And so right from the get-go, there was an opening position because at the time that morning host was graduating, she was a senior. And so they were looking for people to fill in that position. I applied not knowing that I'd be, getting into it. And I got accepted, I got the position, and it kind of just went from there. I just really started to love being in the know, knowing what's going on, and being able to share that with the community. So that was, I feel like, where my love for journalism really kind of started. And then from there, I also joined the student-run TV broadcasting group, I guess, class. We got like 1 credit for it. But I kind of started, getting used to the cameras and interviewing and all of that. And then from there, I went to a community college. I was a sideline reporter, a sports sideline reporter for the basketball team for the 1.5 years that I was there. After that, I graduated and went to the University of Oregon. Go Ducks. And from there, I joined a student-run group called Duck TV. And there I knew that I wanted to be an on-camera journalist, a reporter of some sort. And just being able to kind of put my skills to the test and, make errors and, make sure that I don't do those and just kind of grow in a community kind of basis. That was amazing. And yeah, kind of just what Jean said, I found it very helpful for me to kind of make sure that I can see my progress or kind of keep my projects or my stories that I've done that I was really proud of. I'd upload them to YouTube. I'd save them and, post them on Facebook and whatnot. And I ended up uploading a reel of some of my favorite stories that I've done and, anchor tests and whatnot. And I uploaded on YouTube before or during my senior year. And because I decided to collect and keep all of my stories and my anchor tests, that YouTube video was the whole entire reason that I even have a job right now. I was very, very blessed and fortunate enough that I actually didn't even need to apply to this job or really any other job. A recruiter actually found my YouTube reel, my anchor reporter reel, and he took it upon himself and sent it to all of the news directors that he knew that were looking for reporters. And so and then from there, I got, again, beyond blessed. I got, I think, maybe like 10 job offers all across the US. And I ended up coming and visiting Redding, California at KRCR. And I fell in love. And then now I'm here almost 2 years in.
That's awesome. Thank you, ladies. And that question was from Andrea Gonzalez. For me, I started writing for the local newspaper at UC Santa Barbara. And that was my first year. Then I also started doing radio. And my first interview was Jennifer Aniston. So that's a cool little side note. My first ever interview for radio was an A-list celebrity. So that was fun. That was exciting, but I knew that I wanted to do journalism at the point of working for the radio and doing print journalism. And when I graduated, I still didn't know exactly what form of journalism. I love print because I love writing articles, and I also love TV because I love being live on TV. So I did an internship at a station in Fresno, Fox 26, and that's where I knew I really wanted to do TV journalism. And like Daisy said, put together a reel, put it online, started applying places, and you can really go anywhere across the US. There's so many markets, and I wanted to stay on the West Coast, so I started in Eugene, Oregon, and then wanted to come closer to home, so became a multimedia journalist and weekend weather anchor in Redding, California. And it's just, I love this career. I could not see myself doing anything else for sure. Also, is there anything else that you guys wanted to add about tips and advice as far as somebody looking to become a journalist?
I would just maybe say, don't be afraid to send out that email, send out your reel, your email, maybe your intentions, your drive, because I feel like that, at least with some of the reporters that have joined KRCR, our team, Cassandra and I's here in Reading, their persistence, I feel like really helped them stand out from maybe some of the other applicants that have applied. And don't be afraid to maybe an interview or over the phone talk with the news director, really anyone else. Don't be afraid to, share a little bit of who you are as a person. My news director told me that a reason as to why she decided to hire me instead of other people who were applying for my specific position was my personality and the fact that I wasn't a robot during our interview. And she just said that she really appreciated that. And ever since then, I thought, okay, you know what, me being myself is important. Again, not just for me personally, but to show everyone else that, I am not a robot, that I am a person with feelings and, a life and all of that. So I feel like that's maybe a tidbit that I'd share with people who are maybe trying to get into this business. Again, just, don't be afraid to reach out and ask questions, ask to talk to some of the reporters, get a feel about, what they like, maybe the thing that they least like, maybe at their station specifically in the town that they live in. But just don't be afraid to be yourself. Don't be afraid to ask a lot of questions, because you also have to make sure that that specific station, that specific area is where you will enjoy your time away from being a journalist.
Yeah. And for people who have, their foot in the door already, or they're starting out, they're early on in their career, I would just really encourage people to stand up for the stories that you believe in. That's one thing that if I could go back and talk to my earlier self, is I would just really encourage myself to push back and defend my news judgment. Even though I was young, I you're in these largely white environments that have certain biases that in many cases may be unexamined. And so the idea that something is not newsworthy, that your ideas are too extreme or too often my stories would be treated as if they were biased or opinionated. And now I am an opinion columnist, but early on in my career, I definitely was not. And I was just proposing stories that were very much centered on overlooked populations. And I would be responded to as if that's a little activist-y. And I just encourage you, do not believe that. That is not true. You will be made throughout the course of your career. If you are not, an Anglo-white person, you will be made to believe that you are biased or emotional or overly invested, and it's just not true. You have a perspective that is important, and your ideas for covering the communities that you come from are potentially transformative as far as actually obtaining true objectivity in this field, which we do not have right now. We have a severe imbalance in favor of reinforcing white male supremacy in our journalism. It is why we are seeing the resurgence of white extremism that we have today. I really think that the media has been complicit, and you all have such an important role to play in combating that. And part of that is going to mean standing up for your ideas, and not in a necessarily angry or attacking or critiquing way, but telling your editor, look, I know we don't usually do these stories, but here's the case to be made about why that's a problem and why that's a systemic problem. and why we have an opportunity here to really stand out and to do this differently.
That was great advice. Thank you so much, Jean and Daisy. I do have a question. Like you said, we are I've never seen this kind of, in my career, the kind of pushback from community, or the kind of, unnecessary commentary from the community, just fake news. That's just so sad for me to hear. Where do you guys see this going? Do you guys see people who are journalists maybe catching a break from all the community pushback? Or where do you guys hope this goes?
I'm actually I'm writing about this right now. And so I'm not sure if I'll be able to articulate clearly because I'm still sort of developing my thoughts. But I think that right now, a lot of the polarization that we have and the hatred that the media gets is when you look at a lot of the conspiracy theories that are out there that are attacking and demonizing of the media, a lot of it has to do with resistance to social control, this idea that there's deep state or globalist elites, or the media is an elite that is trying to manipulate everybody else. And in reality, what we have is a world where we are all being manipulated by algorithms that target us based on the extraction of our data on social media, on all of our devices. We now have a surveillance economy that thrives off of learning about us based on our online activity and then manipulating us. So we are all in a sense, being manipulated. And I feel once we collectively decide we can regulate that, we regulate the extraction of online data, I think it is going to severely, if we can do that, if we're able to get there, where we all agree, we need to regulate this digital economy and this surveillance capitalism that we have now, I think we're going to see a real lessening of polarization as well as hatred toward journalists, because people are going to start to recognize journalists are just doing their job. They're trying to put out, they're trying to inform their communities about what's happening in their communities. And it'll be less about us versus them, but we really need to, because right now, what sells and what gets clicks and what gets virality is the incendiary and the extreme and the us versus them narrative. And that's not going to go away until we regulate the extraction of data online by Google, by Facebook, I know that this is getting a little bit weird, but this is technical, but I have hope that we can get there as a society, but that's what it's going to require. It's we're going to have to recognize the importance of regulating these tech giants that profit off of getting us to hate each other and to see each other in very reductionistic ways.
Yeah, I think Jean
Wow.
said it perfectly, amazing, more than what I kind of wanted to articulate too. But yeah, I feel I would want to start to see the community realize that, yeah, like Jean said, it's not us against them. It's, we are a community as a whole, and we are just trying to do our job and inform people the way that we're supposed to as journalists. We're just doing our job. And so, yeah, Jean said it perfectly. So again, echo what Jean said.
Yeah, and we, at the end of the day, are humans who love our communities and are doing this for our community, at least from my standpoint. Thank you, ladies, so much. This was amazing. I can't thank you guys. Daisy Caballero, Jean Guerrero, can't thank you guys enough for your time. With that, we are going to hand it off to the next panel. And any other final thoughts? I think we're good here. Stick around. We will be here through noon where we announce the finalists. And thank you everybody for everything. The next panel is at 10:30. And yes, you guys can hang out or come back on the same Zoom link. So thank you so much for Daisy and for Jean for you guys sharing. Thank you so much to Daisy and Jean for sharing your safety measures you guys take as journalists out in the field and also, personally at home. Let's see. The next panel is the first Latina Executive Director of IRE. And that's again at 10:30.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. It was awesome to hear everything that you've gone through. And so I appreciate it. And thank you, Cassandra. And thank you to this amazing organization that allowed me to kind of share my experiences. And yeah, so I appreciate it. And everyone that's watching, feel free to reach out to me if you guys want to ask any follow-up questions, anything. I'm on all social platforms, so I will be more than happy to answer any questions or do a Zoom with you guys, anything like that.
Yeah, same goes for me. Like if you guys want to be connected to any of those resources that I mentioned that PEN America connected me with to protect my safety ahead of my book coming out, I'm happy to do that as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jean. Thank you so much, Daisy. And thank you for all the work that you guys do. Viewers, everybody watching, we are back on again at 10:30. That's Latina Executive Director, first Latina Executive Director. That's going to be a Q&A with Diana Fuentes. Really excited for that. I'll be here for it. Thank you, everybody. And endlessly, thank you, Jean. Thank you, Daisy, for your time. And have a great day. And we hope to see everybody at 10:30 in 13 minutes.